The Acolyte is a High Republic era Star Wars show that takes place right at the end of the era's lifespan. Essentially, the Acolyte will merge the High Republic with everything that leads up to the Phantom Menace. And since the Acolyte takes place in 132 BBY, exactly 100 years before the events of the Phantom Menace, as well as roughly 100 years after the events of the High Republic Phases 1 and 3, we can infer a lot of characters that crossed over between the phases and Phantom Menace will also appear in the Acolyte. I'm Liam from Star Wars Lads, and today we're going to talk about all the characters I think could appear in the Acolyte. Before we get started, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for continued Acolyte coverage throughout the show's entire run. And without further ado, let's get to the characters. Since this is a Jedi and Sith-centric show, let's first look at the Jedi. One of the most famous and obvious characters who could appear in the Acolyte is Jedi Grandmaster Yoda. Master Yoda was the Grandmaster during the High Republic, although he does step away from his role as Grandmaster during some of the events of the High Republic. Now being about 100 years before the events of the Phantom Menace, we can safely assume that Grandmaster Yoda has once again assumed full control of his role, leading the entire Jedi Order. Now, whether we'll see a puppet version of Yoda like we do in the original trilogy, or in the original theatrical cut, VHS cut, and DVD cuts of the Phantom Menace, or we'll go back and do the CGI version of Yoda that is most famous with the design of prequel era Yoda. I would assume we'll probably stick towards that CGI version of Yoda, but it would just be cool to see the Jedi Grandmaster either way. We also do know of 4 other Jedi Masters from the prequel era who are alive and active during the events of the High Republic. Yaddle is the most notable of these 4 and has appeared in actually significant roles in the High Republic, specifically in Phase 2. If we're going to see Yoda, we might as well get to see Yaddle in this show. Then there's also the goofy Cormian Jedi Master, Yarael Poof, who's a member of the Jedi High Council during the Old Republic and has appeared in some of the books, as well as the Thespiasan Jedi Master, Oppo Rancisis, who like Yarael Poof has appeared in small roles in the books and is a member of the Jedi High Council during the High Republic era. Terra Sinube is also part of the High Republic, rising to the rank of Master in 2031 BBY during the events of Phase 1. We can also look at the rest of the Jedi Council from the High Republic Phase 3. Multiple human and non-human members made up the Jedi High Council outside of Yoda, Yarael Poof, and Oppo Rancisis. Anything's possible in Star Wars, but we would imagine 100 years after the events of the High Republic Phase 3 that most of the humans on the Jedi Council would have either passed away or been killed between the events of Phase 3 and the Acolyte. Just in case they appear, these humans that were a part of the Jedi High Council in Phase 3 were Grandmaster Raiki Saka, Keaton Murrogg, Terry Rosason, and Ada Lee Caro. But when we look at the non-human members of the Jedi Council, it is very possible that some of these members are still alive at the beginning of the Acolyte, as we know that the lifespan for non-human but humanoid alien species in Star Wars can greatly differ from that of humans, as we see that now a Miri Allen like Vernestra Rwoh has lived well past 100 years old and is still heavily active in the ongoings of the Jedi Order. The other notable non-human Jedi Council members from the High Republic Phase 3 are Solil Agra, a Nautolan Jedi Master who is considered a fine pilot and an expert at bridging minds through the Force, Efru Shin, a Mon Calamari Jedi Master who was Yoda's temporary replacement on the Jedi Council. There was also the Anx male Jedi Zhou Laru, who was also one of the Grandmasters of the Jedi Order during the time of the High Republic. And finally was Master Adampo, who was a Yakora male. Considering the High Republic is supposed to be the golden age of the Jedi, there have been dozens of Jedi introduced across its comics and novels. Again, it is very unlikely that any of the human characters still live during the time of the Acolyte, barring any unnatural extensions of their lifespans, like carbonite freezing or something of that nature. But the famous Jedi humans of the High Republic Phases 1 and 2 that we know are still alive as of now are Avar Kriss, Elzar Mann, Keith Trennis, Bel Zettifar, Lula Talisola, Reath Silas, Imri Kantaros, and Ram Jamaram. Looking at other non-human Jedi who weren't members of the Council, but were recurring characters in the High Republic, we most notably have the Wookiee Jedi Burryaga and Arkoff. But with Eunice Swotomo playing another Wookiee Jedi Master named Kel Naka, it's unlikely we'll see too much from either of these other Jedi Wookiees. We know Wookiees can live for hundreds of years, so unless Arkoff and Burryaga were killed by the events of the Acolyte, both of them should still be alive. There's also the monster hunting former Jedi Padawan Padawan Ty York, who's a member of the Thalothian species, the Trandoshan Jedi Master Skier, the Kyuzo female Jedi Master Sav Maligan, the Chagrian Jedi Master Torben Buck, nicknamed Buckets of Blood, the Aloxian Jedi Knight Court from the High Republic Adventures series, and Farzala Tarabal, the Zygerian male Jedi Knight. And then there's the non-Jedi but Force-sensitive Zeen Marala. When we're predicting which characters might show up in the Acolyte, we should also look at the Star Wars prequel-era Jedi. Again, specifically looking at non-humans who might show up in this show, we can look at the Phantom Menace Jedi Council, who we haven't yet discussed. It would be a lot of fun to see a lot of these Jedi Council members from the Phantom Menace be presented as more youthful, rash versions of themselves in the Acolyte than who they are in the prequels. One that I would really love to see would be Master Evan Peel, a Lannic Jedi Master who's on the Council during the Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. I've always got the sense that Master Peel was pretty old, even though we don't know exactly what year he was born. Then there's of course the Jedi who sits on the right of Master Yoda throughout the entire prequel trilogy, and that is Master Ki-Adi Mundi. Master Mundi was a Sarean Jedi Master, and we know in Legends he was born in 93 BBY, which would mean he's not yet born during the events of the Acolyte. However, we don't know his birthday in canon, so they could change it and make him a little bit older than he originally was in Legends. There's also the Zabrak Jedi Master Eeth Koth, and another Falothian Jedi, Adi Gallia, although we do know from the recent Living Force book that Adi Gallia is one of the younger members of the Jedi Council during the events of the Phantom Menace. There's the great Iktachi warrior and pilot Jedi Master Saesee Tiin, whose birth year we do not know in either Legends or canon, but in Legends his first story that he appears in takes place in 44 BBY. Like Master Mundi, we could fudge up the age a bit from Legends and make him a pretty young, maybe apprentice age Jedi in the Acolyte. Finally, the one that everybody's been speculating on has been Jedi Master Plo Koon. Plo Koon, one of the favorites from Star Wars The Clone Wars, is a Keldor male Jedi Master, and we do see a Keldor appear in a lot of shots in the Acolyte trailers. It's unknown how old Plo Koon actually is, but we do know in Star Wars Legends that Plo Koon does say he's 382 Keldor years old before 22 BBY. So even though there of course could be more than one Keldor Jedi, it would be really awesome to see a Jedi apprentice or early knight Plo Koon in the Acolyte. There's also 3 other Jedi Masters who we do know were on the Council between the events of the High Republic Phase 3 and the Phantom Menace at some point. There's Eula Brayan, a female Jedi Master from the audio drama Dooku Jedi Lost. Eula Brayan was a Jedi seeker searching the galaxy for initiates to recruit into the Jedi Order. There's also the Mirialan Jedi Master Jor Aerith, who did live all the way until Order 66 in 19 BBY, and first appeared in Dooku Jedi Lost. Since we know Mirialans can now live well over 100 years old, Jor Aerith is a possibility to see in the Acolyte. There's also the Mirialan Jedi Master Katri, who was killed off screen before the events of the Tales of the Jedi episode Choices. We don't exactly know when this episode takes place, but considering it takes place somewhere between 68 BBY and 42 BBY, Katri is a likely candidate to have lived at some point during the Acolyte. And finally, there's Pauli Depatian, who was a human male Jedi Master, who eventually stepped down from the Jedi Council, allowing the Council to offer his seat to Qui-Gon Jinn. Considering he was stepping down from the Jedi Council by 40 BBY, there is a possibility, however slight, that he was alive and part of the Jedi Order during 132 BBY. Let's move on to the Sith, and I'm gonna lump in the rest of the dark side users I think could appear in this show. The most obvious one, and the one we're all talking about and hoping to see in this show, is Darth Tenebrous. For those of you who don't know, Darth Tenebrous is a Bay Knight Sith who did train Darth Plagueis, who eventually trained Darth Sidious, aka Palpatine. Tenebrous was active and in his prime during the events of 132 BBY in Star Wars Legends, and Tenebrous is canon since he was named for one of the Sith legions of the Sith Eternal in The Rise of Skywalker. We don't know exactly what year Tenebrous was born. It is somewhere between 247 and 167 BBY. Obviously 167 would make him only 35 years old during the events of the Acolyte, so I think it is closer to about 200 BBY, but if we're following Star Wars Legends, Darth Tenebrous should be the Sith Master during the events of the show. Darth Tenebrous is killed in 67 BBY by his apprentice, Darth Plagueis. A lot of people want Darth Plagueis to show up in the Acolyte, and if you've been following our channel, you know that Darth Plagueis is my favorite Star Wars book of all time, and as much as I would like to see him appear in live action, I'm gonna have to be the one that crushes a lot of your hopes and dreams, because if we are following Star Wars Legends, Darth Plagueis was born somewhere between 147 and 120 BBY. The Acolyte takes place in 132 BBY, and we do know that the Mun species does live a bit longer than the human species, hypothetically meaning that it takes a bit longer for them to age and mature, to hit puberty, to grow up. If we look at Plagueis being born at the earlier part of that estimation, that would make him 15 at the time of the Acolyte. If we want to take the later part of that estimation, he wouldn't even be born yet. Of course, because his birthday is not officially confirmed in Star Wars canon, we could age him up and make him a bit older and live a bit longer than he does in Star Wars Legends. But I still do feel like it would be a big jump to age him up to the point where he is a full-grown Sith master. If we want to say he's one of the Sith Acolytes, or he is discovered at the end of the show, or he's the Sith apprentice who is reaching out and maybe recruiting the Acolytes that we see in this show, I'm game for that, but I don't want to age him up to the point where he's 40 or 50 or 60 during the events of the Acolyte, because then he'll be way older and past his prime by the time he meets Palpatine and the story of the Darth Plagueis novel can play out. So unfortunately, yes, unless he is very young, I don't see Darth Plagueis appearing in the show, but never say never. And if you're gonna go full circle with all three Sith pre-Palpatine that are featured in the Darth Plagueis book, then there's also the Sith Acolyte / apprentice Darth Venemus. Darth Venemus was also trained by Darth Tenebrous, yes, breaking the rule of two, but kind of as a backup to Plagueis in case Plagueis failed as Darth Tenebrous' apprentice. Tenebrous intended for Venemus and Plagueis to fight, and the victor would ultimately take the prize as the apprentice to Tenebrous. However, since Plagueis was Tenebrous' primary apprentice and was far more powerful than Venemus, eventually taking Venemus, putting him into a coma, and doing Force experiments on his midichlorians, it's unlikely Venemus plays any role in the Acolyte. And the last true Sith I'm going to mention in this part is the Master of Darth Tenebrous. We don't know the Master of Darth Tenebrous' name, but as I mentioned with the dates around Tenebrous' birth, Tenebrous might be kind of young in this show as well. He should still be in the show no matter what, but if he was the Sith apprentice in this show, maybe that Master is the character we see with the smile on the Kylo Ren style helmet that we see in the trailer. There are a couple of other dark side possibilities for this show as well. We do know that one of the main villainous forces in the Acolyte is going to be led by Mother Aniseya. This coven of witches values their independence, their beliefs, and their power. So it's safe to assume when you hear the word witches that it probably connects to some type of magic using the dark side of the Force. The most obvious example of witches who use the dark side of the Force to create magics are the Night Sisters of Dathomir, specifically Mother Talzin, an incredibly powerful clan mother of the Night Sisters, whom even Palpatine feared during his time. We don't know when Talzin was born in either canon or legends, but if we go into dark side magics, it would be very cool to get our first real live action appearance of Mother Talzin. And the final dark side group I'd like to talk about are the Knights of Ren. In the Rise of Kylo Ren comics, and subsequently in a lot of material written by Charles Soule recently, we know that the leader of the Knights of Ren assumed the identity and name of Ren when they took control of the group. Even though the group, the Knights of Ren, were formed in 3 ABY, a lot of people, myself included, have drawn comparisons with the mask design from this new hypothetical Sith and Kylo Ren, aka Ben Solo, from the sequel trilogy. The mask looks very Kylo Ren-esque, including having kind of the outward pointing tail on the back of the helmet. Maybe we don't exactly see the Knights of Ren, and since the Ren before Kylo Ren was a human male and definitely wasn't alive during the events of the Acolyte, maybe whoever this Sith was ultimately inspires the Knights of Ren, or at least Kylo Ren, in the future. There are some other characters that aren't a part of the Jedi or Sith factions that I would like to discuss. I don't want to put too much emphasis on these characters considering this is a Jedi and Sith show, but we do know from the promotional material and the trailers that there is a smuggler element to the show, even if it isn't necessarily one of the main plot lines. The actor Manny Jacinto is playing the character of Kamir, who's apparently a smuggler who now lives a life of leisure as a trader of oddities. There are some notable Underworld characters who could make appearances from the High Republic and beyond. When we're talking about Jedi and Underworld, most notably you look at Maz Kanata, who's played by Lupita Nyong'o in the sequel trilogy, but has appeared throughout the High Republic, mostly in comic books, and was born over 800 years before the events of the Acolyte. There's also, of course, the legendary pirate Thermoculus Crescent Volt Scissor Punch, aka Therm Scissor Punch, who's an associate of Maz Kanata and was alive and active during Phase 2 of the High Republic way back in 382 BBY. There's also the iconic iconic Vintian navigator Geode, who yes, literally just looks like a rock. The Nihil are also our main villains of the High Republic Phase 1 and 3, and though I fully expect the Nihil to be defeated in the High Republic Phase 3, it wouldn't be that surprising if the impact they had on the galaxy, maybe some remnant groups of the Nihil, still plagued the Jedi during the time of the Acolyte. The Hutts also play a role in the High Republic, and if we're going to do Underworld, we could see the Grand Hutt Council, or members of it, like Gardulla, who we know was very prominent during the events of the Phantom Menace, or Jabba, who of course is the most iconic of all Hutts. The High Republic hasn't gotten too much into bounty hunters, but one bounty hunter it has created that does make the transition all the way from the High Republic into the events of the original trilogy is Diva Lompop, a Shawnee female bounty hunter who does work for Jabba the Hutt and eventually Crimson Dawn. And just a fun one to throw in there because he would be alive during this time is of course our favorite Wookiee, Chewbacca. This one is super unlikely considering we already have multiple Wookiee options for Jedi Wookiees in this series, but Chewbacca would be about 78 years old during the events of the Acolyte, and if we ever went to Kashyyyk, maybe we could get a Chewbacca appearance. And if we get a Chewbacca appearance, let's get an Itchy and Mala appearance as well. Let's get the whole Chewbacca family. And that's going to do it for all the characters I could see showing up in the Acolyte from pre-existing Star Wars material. Thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for the Acolyte coverage. We will be doing live stream reviews after every single episode of the Acolyte, as well as predictions and speculation for what we think might happen every single week before the latest episodes of the Acolyte drop, and we'll be releasing more and more videos that pertain to the Acolyte as the series gets going. Comment below, let me know which characters you think could be in the show. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you all next time.